Welcome to the Senior Rehab Project, the podcast for the community of rehab clinicians working to advance care for older adults. I'm your host, Erinn Carey, here with Dr. Tali Spaisman, and this is the SR Prereq segment where the evidence-based conversations keep you up to date. In today's episode, we are going to discuss the impact of resilience on health in older adults, and this is a cross-sectional analysis from the International Mobility and Aging Study. Tali, how are you today?
The impact of resilience?
Yeah, resilience.
It's one of my favorite words.
Yeah, and they have like a very specific definition, which I found really helpful because I'm used to like the engineering definition because my husband is an engineer, dentist, whatever. But we'll get into all of that. But yeah, so anything before we get started that you want to say to our audience members or, you know, to me?
Just that like older people are stronger than we think and are more resilient than we normally think. Yeah,
and this study is going to show us how potentially resilience can be an indicator for self-perceived health.
Okay, I'm really excited about it because I think that there's a lot of terms that I don't know or like that you're going to explain to me.
Yeah, I am.
And I like when you explain to me stuff.
I'm happy to do it. Okay. So this was published in BMJ Open. BMJ stands for British Medical Journal. It was published in November 2018, and the impact factor of this journal is 2.413. The authors are an international group of authors from Canada and Brazil. The introduction starts with talking about how resilience has been demonstrated to be a potential predictor of successful aging. And they define resilience as the process of positively adapting to adversity, trauma, threats, or significant stress. So your ability to handle the things life throws at you is resilience.
Yeah, I kind of always looked at it like in two ways. There's the older adults way that we talk about, and then I look at it as the opposite of frailty.
Yeah, okay. I can see. I think resilience is considered to be less physiological than frailty, but I can see how they could be on that same spectrum.
Yeah. That's why I said like more like in the older adults medically way. That's how I look at it. And the other way is there's a great quote by Maya Angelou. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them.
Beautiful. I think that's totally relevant and applicable to what we're talking about today.
And so sometimes it's not, our decision. Like sometimes life is not poetry.
Oh, really? Darn.
But yeah, I think of it like that. Like the events that happen and the trauma that happen, it's how you bounce back. It's not the fall, it's the rising.
Yep, exactly. And that is a perfect definition of resilience. Just for funsies, I looked up an engineering definition. So resilience is an objective of design, maintenance, and restoration for buildings and infrastructure, as well as communities. It is the ability to absorb or avoid damage without suffering complete failure. So really, I think resilience in buildings and resilience in people are really similar.
They're really similar, although we're not buildings.
No. Except unless you're a brick house. But if you're not, then no. Okay.
Okay, keep on going.
Okay. So sociologists and psychologists have been trying to tease out whether it's a personality trait or something that's more inherent to the person versus something that can be facilitated. And evidence suggests that it can be built throughout the lifespan. So things that lead to someone having more resilience are things like optimism, adaptive coping styles, community involvement, social support and or social connectedness, independence with ADLs, high mobility, physical well-being, and self-rated successful aging. And that one's going to be important in this article. Some research suggests that adverse social childhood experiences predict a greater resilience later in life, especially in women, and it's also based on location, which is kind of counterintuitive.
I don't think it's counterintuitive. It's kind of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I think it's more the fact that it's just social adverse childhood experience, not economic childhood experiences, adverse economic childhood experiences. So like trauma or abuse, those people can be more resilient, but just straight up poverty, it doesn't show the same relationship.
I can't understand why the social, the social aspect and having, because it means that you survived things that, like, in childhood, and it gives you this mechanism of, like, you know what, the world didn't end.
That's
like,
true.
I look at it like, oh, so when I was a child, like, my birthday is coming.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I know, but it's one of my memories, and when I was 5 years old, and I had a birthday during the Gulf War.
Oh.
Now, it's okay, but it's really hard to blow candles when you have a gas mask on.
You've told me this story. That's such a good image.
It's such and really, like, try.
I'm gonna go find a gas mask right now, and I'm gonna get some candles, and I'm giving it a go.
Give it a go.
I will fail.
But it's one of those things that you had it as a child, and after that, you know what? There was a war, but the world didn't end.
And you moved on, and you were able to bounce back.
Yeah, I was able to blow candles after.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
I had about 25, No, I'm just kidding. What I'm saying is that, like, I do see how coping with social aspects that are hard
mm-hmm.
can give you like a mechanism of, like, you know what, I survived this, I can survive other things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Back to adverse childhood experiences. Yes.
Like war.
Yeah, right. They talk about how, although it has this, like, potentially positive effect where, like, having an adverse social childhood experience can, like, lead you to be more resilient, there are all these horrible downsides that really don't make it worth it. So, like, don't go out and drown your child so that they can successfully age. Okay. So the downsides of adverse childhood experiences are obesity, depression, disability, chronic disease, shortened lifespan, poor self-rated health. Each adverse childhood experience increases the risk of poor adult health, but it does not predict it.
I agree.
Yeah, you're on board. So
I'm on board.
Yeah. Adverse childhood experience researchers are actively trying to tease out the differences between, like, how it can be positive and how it can be negative, which kind of sounds like evil. Like, what's the right amount of abuse someone can take that'll make them better, you know?
No, to be fair, I know many people, like, you know, that were bullied, or nobody's good when they're a teenager. Like, everybody has some... Nobody childhood memories or adulthood or adolescence memories are all pink.
Correct.
And I do think that there's a certain amount that is beneficial and certain amount that is like, this is not worth it. I also work in a child psych unit.
Wait, a child psych unit? I thought you were Jerry psych.
Now I do all of them.
Oh, that's terrifying.
Now I do all the psychs.
So you're really, like, front and center to these adverse childhood experiences.
That's the thing. I'm like, and every time, you know, everybody has some fights with their parents, but but knock on wood. And every time that I go once a week, I go to rounds and the child and adolescence unit.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I just want to call my parents and like say, thank you for being great parents.
Thank you for not screwing up.
Yeah, thank you for not, like, for everybody screws up, but thank you for not screwing up tremendously. Because it happens more than you think.
I believe it, yeah. So, like I said, the adverse childhood experience researchers are trying to tease out the differences, and right now, they think that it is a complicated interaction between vulnerability, protective personal assets, and supportive social resources. So basically, so far what they can be confident about is that social support and community are very, very important.
It's one of those things, I'm sorry to take it to the army again.
That's fine.
But as you know, a lot of veterans, a lot of people in active duty do suffer from PTSD.
Yeah.
And about years ago, there was a research about what would lessen the likelihood of someone getting PTSD from combat or from unpleasant event in duty.
Right.
And one of those things were social support before and after.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Now to tie it back to geriatrics, there aren't a lot of studies looking at resilience as a predictor of better health in older age. They expect that with increased resilience, there would be increased health in all stages of life. And it is correlated with subjective successful aging, greater happiness, greater life satisfaction, less depression, and increased longevity. But there are no studies looking at resilience and self-rated health. So that's what this article wants to do. And why is self-rated health so important? It is a valid marker of objective health. It predicts mortality, morbidity, healthcare expenditures, physical activity, and cognitive capacity. And their rationale for doing this study is that previous studies looking at self-related health generally have excluded the elderly, or they've looked at very, very specific populations, usually like adolescents with Down syndrome or something like that. So the purpose of this article is to explore the association between resilience and self-related health among an international cohort of older adults, and to examine whether long-term negative health impacts of adverse childhood experiences are modified by resilience. So that's it for the introduction. You feel like that's a pretty good background on what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I'm saying let's dive into it.
Sweet. On to the methods. The data is from the International Mobility and Aging Study, which is a longitudinal cohort study that gets its data from surveys and biophysical measures. They looked at community dwelling 65 to 74-year-olds beginning in 2012. They are in Albania, Brazil, Colombia, and Canada. So there are varying social demographics between the sites, but within the sites, there's relative homogeneity of like economic factors and social factors.
Yeah, and also they're very much like within the world, they're all in kind of different continents. And
yeah, I think that's a really good strength of this study for sure.
Yeah.
So they had 1,995 participants. They were equally men and women, and they were interviewed in 2012, 2014, and 2016. Unfortunately, they state this as a limitation of the study later. There was a 25% attrition rate due to death, frailty, cognitive impairment, or just moving away. So I guess if people died, of course, they couldn't participate. But if they were frail, they also, I guess, were excluded from the study. Which, I don't know, you could get some interesting data from that, but I'm not,
I think so too. I think that, but did they say why they excluded people that were frail?
No, they didn't. I think this paper is just one of many on this particular study. And I anticipate that in one of the earlier papers, they would bring that up, but I didn't see it in this article.
Okay. And I assume they didn't say how they determined that someone was frail.
No, they didn't say like Freed criteria or anything else. They just said frailty. Okay. No. But okay. Good question. So the data from the 2016 surveys and biophysical measures was used in the study, except for the report of adverse childhood experiences which was from the 2012 dataset, and the resilience measures, which was from the 2014 dataset. So they use the Wagnild resilience scale as an explanatory variable. It has been validated in older adults. It is 14 statements, and you rate based on the level of agreement with 7 options. So example statements are, I have self-discipline. I can usually find something to laugh at. Or my life has meaning. They dichotomized the data. The cutoff was at 50%. If you were 50% below, you were considered to have low resilience. Above, high resilience, which 50% is I don't know. That's just, I see why they did it. I don't know how accurate that is at teasing out levels of resilience, because I'd be interested to see like super high resilience versus like high resilience.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. So then childhood adversity was defined as social and economic adversity in the first 15 years of life, including parental alcohol or drug use, physical violence, abuse, the family's economic situation, whether they ever went hungry, or if the parents were seeking employment or unable to find it. And it was just a yes or no. I experienced this during my first 15 years of life.
Okay, so poverty is included within it.
Yeah, so they looked at social and economic adverse childhood experiences. So the first three ones were social.
Yeah. like parents, parental alcohol or drug abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also looked at the current socioeconomic status. Basically, they would ask them if the person's income was meeting their needs. They would rate it from very well to not at all. They asked about current depression. They used the Center for Epidemiologic Studies depression scale, which has been validated in older adults. It's 20 items. And then for the current physical functioning, they used the SPPB, the short physical performance battery, and the cutoff score was 8. Are you familiar with the SPPB?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I think we did go through it in school.
Yeah, no, we definitely did. I use it all the time now that I work in a SNF. So it's balance, gait, and lower extremity strength, basically.
Yeah.
And a score 7 or below indicates a high risk of rehospitalization if they're in the SNF setting. Just a little tidbit for you there. Then the outcome variable was self-rated health. Question was basically, how would you rate your health? Very good, good, fair, poor, or very poor. And if they were very good or good, they considered to have high self-rated health, and everything below low self-rated health. For the statistics, they used SPSS. They did descriptive statistics by site and sex. They did a chi-squared for each independent variable and outcome variable, and they dichotomized the data, and they describe all their rationale for that, which I touched upon a little bit. And then a student's t-test for numeric values. Then logistic regressions of resilience, sex, age, study site, income sufficiency, depression, the SPPB score, and all of these with self-reported health. So that's it for the methods. Any questions? Thoughts?
No, it sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, it's very clear cut.
Where was the recruitment from?
It was from those different sites. There were 5 sites total, 2 in Canada, then Albania, Brazil, and Colombia.
Yeah, but how did they recruit? Was it
So they described it, and I didn't write it down.
Oh,
but
okay.
it was
Then
I think
mind.
It was in doctors' offices, they would say, hey, you qualify for the study, and then they'd have an informational meeting about it in some places.
Okay. Because I was wondering if they took from a senior citizen center somewhere next to it, or just posters.
Yeah.
But forget about that. It's not that interesting.
No, that's an important piece of information. I was just being lazy. So thank you. I appreciate that. Keep me honest. Okay, so the results. Table 1, the tables are very nice. They're clear. They are to the point. I approve of these tables. They get the Erinn Carey seal of approval.
Wow, it's higher than my seal of approval.
Yeah, we should maybe keep track of all the tables we approve of. So table 1 is the baseline characteristics stratified by site. And the information they include is age, income sufficiency, depression, SPPB score, adverse childhood experiences, number of people with low resilience, and it's all separated by sex. The table 2 is the same thing as table 1, except they're separated by self-reported health. They found that resilience in general was pretty high, but it did vary by site. Low self-reported health was more prevalent among women, people living outside of Canada, people with increased childhood economic adversity, people with less income, more depression, poor physical function, and low resilience. So that, we kind of expect that. So people are going to think that their health is worse if everything else is worse.
So, and if they're not Canadians.
Yeah, if they're not Canadians. Yeah, that's socialized healthcare, man.
That's socialized healthcare.
They got it going on. Good work, Canada.
They're onto something. People feel less sick when it doesn't cost $250 just to go to to get antibiotics.
Wow, it only costs $250. How cheap. America. Yeah. Oh, they found that early social adversity did not relate to self-reported health in older adults, which it does in the younger populations, which I talked about in the introduction, which I thought was interesting.
I think that by the time you're an adult, you have gone through so many things that it's not that the childhood doesn't matter anymore, but there are some things that matter more. Things happen. Like family member died, and your wife left you, and kids went to college and went through a drug addiction. So many things have happened that you don't care that much that the kids didn't let you play soccer with them.
You hit the nail on the head. They actually say in the discussion that they think that's why that it didn't have as much of an impact on older adults. So nice.
Yes.
Nailed it. The significant correlates of self-related health were sex, sight, income, depression, and SPPP score. So there was a positive correlation between those two. If one, well, except for sex and sight, if like the income was higher and there was less depression, they had higher self-related health, basically.
We do know very much that depression relates to self-reported health.
Oh, 100%.
We've talked about it about a year and a half ago or something like that.
Have you really been doing that this long?
We've been doing it this long.
Nice.
People have been listening, and
at least 5. All 5 of you, we love you.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah, let's hang out. They found that there was no benefit to income sufficiency, but income sufficiency was associated with poorer health in general. So self-reported health, it didn't really affect it, but actual health, it did. Okay. Then they added to the model of all these different correlates of self-related health, the economic and social adversity. It didn't change anything, actually. Either of them. That's the same sort of thing we were talking about, like those early adverse childhood experiences. They think they just don't have as much of an effect when you're 65 and up because you've had other things happen, Yeah,
so many things have happened.
Yeah. And then they added to the model resilience and found that it strongly correlated with self-related health. And in addition, the addition of resilience did not significantly change the effect of other correlates. They also found that sight was a strong predictor of health, which we can guess.
What was?
Sight, so the location, we were talking about.
Yeah, I assume that people in Albania or people in Brazil were in Brazil when they hosted the World Cup, it was a whole issue of you're building stadiums and we don't have money for food.
Yeah, there was that. Exactly. Okay, so that's it for the results. Anything before we go to the discussion?
No, just that.
Solid.
I do wonder, at what age, it doesn't matter anymore for resilience.
That's a good question.
At what age you should kind of forsake your childhood trauma and be an adult?
Be like, I'm over it.
and just suck it and move on.
That's a great question. I feel like some population study survey could help with that sort of thing.
Oh, I'm asking for a friend. By friend, I mean me.
Oh yeah, for sure. Come on, aging. Let's go. All right. I'm going to start with a quote. While resilience is a predictor of older adults' health, social and economic adverse childhood experiences are not. Resilience also diminishes but does not eliminate the effect of current income sufficiency, depression, and objective physical performance on self-related health. In the answer to our research question, the significance of long-term health harms, such as early economic adversity when examined alone, is eliminated by current circumstances, including, but not limited to, resilience. So although adverse childhood experiences in younger population has an effect on self-related health, in older adults, the present is a bigger factor. See, well, you nailed it, basically. Tali already told us that. You got it.
Yay, I'm so happy. Not because I'm right, but because...
I'm happy because you're right. Come on, own it.
Yeah, because I'm right. I'm never right.
You are right today.
That's true.
Today's the day.
It was really interesting. There's... when I studied theater, before I studied PT, before I had a doctorate in physical therapy, I studied theater.
You fancy.
And I had an acting teacher that that said, you always talk about the moment before, like what happened before the scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought that the moment before is very important, but never as the moment happening right now. And I think that way about like all, when you're an older adult, like yes, your childhood matters and everything, but not as much as your health right now. Like it's like, when somebody says, yeah, he was a preemie, I'm like, yes, but he's 47 now, it doesn't matter anymore. Do you want me to adjust his age? Fine.
Wait, do people actually say that to you? Like, oh no, this 50-year-old was a preemie. Okay. What?
At some point, I mean, like I remember when I was working in a hospital, and the mother was like, we talk about medical history and social history, and he was 41 or 43. And the mother said, yeah, but he was a preemie.
Come on.
And it took everything in me not to laugh. I went to the side and laughed, and left it out. But
that's hilarious. That is too funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Also in the discussion, they talk about how resilience is a dynamic process. So there can be individual and community interventions. There's the identification and strengthening of personal assets and environmental resources to augment resilience and therefore preserve self-related health. So I read that and I thought of like the CrossFit community and like all of these clinics that are more geared toward wellness. They can often build that community. So that's kind of where we as PTs can potentially help build someone's resilience by helping provide that safe space in that community.
Yeah, so I think that's the important thing, is that we can build resilience.
Yeah, it gives us a better option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Yep. They talk about how with lower income, the people have more depression and lower physical function, and therefore they found that the people with those aspects had lower resilience scores, and they don't know why that's the case. They say that maybe reversing physical function and mood is really tough. And it's kind of like how they talk about how increasing income without resources is tough. So physical function, we can help with that. It's our bread and butter. Yeah. And as far as location, it affected adversity, resilience, and self-related health. And it was basically dichotomized to Canada versus not Canada.
That's how the world is divided right now. Canada versus not Canada.
Yeah, true. You're right.
And Canada is winning.
Canada's doing great. Okay. In summary, resilience seems to augment self-related health and may also shape and be shaped by other medical and social realities that are central to older adults' view of their health. Together, these override any measurable harm of early childhood adversity, and the strong impact of self-related health raises the question of links between social capital and resilience, a question that should be addressed in future research. So then they say some limitations are that this is not, like, you can't establish any causal relationships between these factors. They can't define the direction of the association, whether resilience affects self-related health or it's self-related health that affects resilience. And then the loss to follow-up was pretty big, like we talked about. And the people who remained in this study were likely the more healthier. That's it. That's what I got for this study. Thoughts, feelings?
No, just that I really like this study.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I like the I do think, and it's not only what I think, it's what have been proven. There is a connection between mind and body, and the stronger your mind is, the more likely your body is going to be stronger, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think about how, like, there's been this separation between the mind and the body. The mind is inside the body. It's right here. It's a part of this. It makes things go. There's no line. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for this study. It's really interesting. Is it open source?
Yes, it is open source. I
Yay!
Pretty much only pick open source articles because I like to quote them, because if they're not open source and I quote them, I don't want to be sued. So
Thank you so much, Erinn.
Thank you, Tali, and thank you all for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you've gained from this episode, consider supporting our work. You can become a patron through Patreon, a service that allows people like you to support people like us. You can give as little as $1 a month or become a game changer for $8.99 a month, where you'll get an awesome Redefine Old mug and access to our monthly meetups. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com to learn more and find the show notes for this episode. And do not forget to stay funky.